We're going to start, of course, with the news that we have been following and will continue following, because the war with Iran is nearly 2 weeks in and showing no signs of slowing down as missiles continue to rain down on the region and the economic fallout escalates. Thick black smoke was seen billowing over skyscrapers in Dubai just this morning, as authorities said air defenses intercepted a projectile sparking the blaze. This just one of the many attacks Iran continues to launch on the region. Saudi Arabia says it downed dozens of drones in the early hours today, and damage can be seen in northern Israel, where officials say a missile strike caused extensive destruction. Iran also continues to hit oil and energy infrastructure. A New York Times analysis showing at least 16 oil tankers, cargo, and other commercial ships have been attacked in the Persian Gulf since the war began. Israel's Air Force, meanwhile, says it struck more than 200 targets in western and central Iran in just the past day. And Israel continues to ramp up its bombardment of Beirut, sending smoke into the air near the Lebanese government's headquarters and in areas near bars, restaurants, and schools. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said yesterday his country's attacks are creating the, quote, optimal conditions for the fall of Iran's government, before adding, quote, a regime is toppled from within. It comes as we've also learned a U.S. Air Force refueling aircraft crashed in Iraq yesterday. How many U.S. service members were on board and their status is currently unknown, and rescue efforts are ongoing. The military says the crash was not due to hostile or friendly fire. U.S. Central Command says 2 refueling planes were involved in the incident. One landed safely, while the other went down in western Iraq. The refueling tanker is the 4th publicly acknowledged aircraft to crash as part of this war with Iran. Last week, 3 fighter jets were mistakenly downed by friendly fire in Kuwait. Meanwhile, President Trump issued a new threat to Iran's leaders overnight, posting on social media just after 12:30 a.m. Eastern time, quote, watch what happens to these deranged scumbags today. The president also calling it a great honor to kill the Iranian regime. In a post yesterday, he was dismissive, too, of rising oil prices, writing that the United States is the largest producer in the world by far. So when oil prices go up, we make a lot of money. Again, we're focused on the price at the pump. We're going to continue to follow that. But let's go first to the region. MS Now international reporter Inez de la Cuetara joins us live from Jerusalem. Inez, talk a little bit about the latest that you're seeing and hearing on the ground there this morning. And I wonder, too, if you could briefly dip into the domestic politics for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We've talked about the ways that his goals with Iran and the regime might diverge from those of the Trump administration at some point. So I wonder if you can scene set for us and then just dip into the domestic politics where you are briefly.
Yeah, Ali, so we'll get into the domestic politics in a second, but first I want to show you where we are. We are in Jerusalem's Old City right now, and you can see it's a complete ghost town. This is typically a really bustling part of town, but all these shops have been closed. There's just the one shop open here, and it's the same thing on this side of town as well. You can see shops closed for as far as the eye can see. I will tell you, I was here after October 7th, and certainly shops were closed then. People were scared, but it feels worse this time around. I remember back then I was still able to walk into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, for instance. This time around, that's not the case. The whole street leading up to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre has been closed. The Al-Aqsa Mosque has also been closed, one of the holiest sites in Islam, and that is being condemned by Gulf nations because this is the holy month of Ramadan. But the Israeli government has extended wartime restrictions, and gatherings of more than 50 people have been banned. It's also worth noting that today is Quds Day, which is a day that was started by the Iranian regime to protest Israel and stand in solidarity with the Palestinians. But we don't expect to see massive Quds Day protests here because of those wartime restrictions. I will say the back and forth with Iran very much continuing. There was a missile actually that landed close to the Old City a couple of days ago, close to the Western Wall. So that is, really, I think, alarming for a lot of people here. And Jerusalem is rarely targeted, typically. And beyond that, of course, we're watching the fighting with Lebanon continuing as well, the back and forth with Hezbollah. Some interesting comments from the Israeli defense minister, who said that if Lebanon doesn't prevent Hezbollah attacks, Israel will take the territory and do it ourselves. So hinting there potentially at a ground incursion. We were up north yesterday, and we did see a number of tanks being moved towards the north. Some interesting comments from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as well, who said that he can't be certain that the people of Iran will take their government. He did say the U.S. and Israel are creating the right conditions for that to happen, that there are more surprises on the way, more help on the way. way, but that ultimately a regime must be toppled from within. You mentioned domestic politics. I mean, Netanyahu here has a lot of support for this war. Pretty much everyone we've spoken to since we've arrived here does support this war. There's a sense that this is their one chance to kind of, eliminate all the threats from all the Iranian proxies in the region and to try and topple the regime in Iran. So that is very different from what we're hearing in the U.S. And I think going forward, we might see some divide between the U.S. and Israel with regards to this war and how long to keep this war going. We have heard from some Israeli officials talking about how there shouldn't be a time limit on the operation, and they continue to insist that they want to keep going to the end, which they've clearly laid out for them means toppling the regime in Iran. Beyond that, we are watching that story of the 2 U.S. military planes that were involved in an incident. We understand that one of them, according to Israeli media, did land safely here in Israel, but the second one crashed in western Iraq, and it's still unclear the status of the crew that was on board.
MS Now international reporter Inez de la Cuetara covering a lot of ground from us live from Jerusalem at that stunning scene, a very quiet street there. Inez, thank you, and keep reporting. I want to bring in now the head of editorial content for Wired Middle East, Carla Certain. Carla, I wonder if we can focus a little bit on a different angle of a conversation we've been having a lot, which is the Strait of Hormuz continuing to be closed. We've talked a lot about the effect that it has on oil and the broader global supply chain, but I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your focus on the impact that we're seeing then in the tech space, things like chips and AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at the Strait of Hormuz, obviously that is a global energy choke point. The quickest thing that we talk about is crude oil and oil products. But some of those oil products are used to make computer chips, specifically helium, which is produced largely by Qatar. 38% of the world's helium supply comes from Qatar. That chemical is super important in order to develop semiconductors, right? And most of that happens in South Korea. So their supply has been really hindered, and South Korean officials have said this may have an impact on chip supply in the future if the Strait of Hormuz continues to be closed.
And I think that's really important then when we consider the rippling impacts that we're going to see, not just in the immediate region where you also are. Geopolitics, of course, the focus that Inez had, but then, of course, the way that other parts of the economy are impacted by this, too. I think there's another interesting piece that you've written in recent days about the dissonance of, delivery drivers still being at work, still trying to get around, and the ways that global warfare in the cyberspace is now not just impacting people's ability to see where they are on GPS, but I think just the dissonance that it shows between a war raging on in the region and people still trying to go about their day to day. I thought this story was shocking and fascinating.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I think there's 2 parts to that. One is life on the ground here, especially in Dubai, has largely continued. Yes, there are missile interceptions. Yes, there are attacks, but people are still going to work. Many of us are working from home, but life has continued. For the delivery apps, there's a big debate online about whether or not you should even use them, if that's endangering these drivers' lives unnecessarily. But if you look at the UN International Labor Organization, it does call them essential workers. So I don't know. There's still a big debate on that for sure.
There's still a big debate on that. But I guess to just button it up, given the fact that you were on the ground in a much different area, of course, than where Inez was, our correspondent who was on just before you. Can you talk about what the mood on the ground has been as this is a conflict that looks like it's going to stretch on for an unknown continued amount of time?
I'd call it careful. I'd call the mood is careful. There is a certain amount of tension in the air, but you still see people out going to restaurants, going to work. People are still out and about. We have really quick missile alert systems, and the missile defense system have largely kept people safe. So if you look at the damages and fatalities in the UAE, there have been 6 fatalities so far and 131 minor to moderate injuries. So people are largely able to keep going through life as usual with some adjustments.
Again, I do think that it's a real moment of dissonance for folks who are watching what is a large-scale conflict playing out on their screens and then also trying to go about their day-to-day while also tracking the ripple effects throughout the global economy. It is just a lot to keep track of. Head of editorial content for Wired Middle East, Carla Certain, live with us from Dubai. Thank you for your reporting and for coming on.
Thank you for having me.